Hi, everybody. Welcome to Encyclopedia Bartannica, a podcast about Simpsons references. I'm Harrison George, jumping in real quick with a special announcement. We are now on YouTube. Full video of the episodes will be available the week after they debut on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Check out the link below for our YouTube. Now, please enjoy this episode with me and my co-host, Eli Mandel. We have a fantastic episode today. This is really fun. One of our earliest episodes. This is Season 2, Episode 21, 3 Men in a Comic Book from May 9th, 1991. Is this the earliest episode we've done? Have we done anything earlier? We did Season 2, Episode 5, Dancin' Homer with Asher. So this is only our second time dipping into Seasons 1 through 3, I think.
Yeah. But this
was a weird experience. This is a great episode.
Yeah. I was like, I need to go back, maybe start from the beginning because it was astonishing. I mean, not astonishing, but it was laugh out loud funny. I really, really enjoyed this episode.
I don't return to this era very often. And so far when I have for the show, it's been a joy.
Totally.
It's been so much fun. Not only are we discussing a great episode, we have an amazing guest. Literally, I wanted to have this person on since we started the show because I've been a fan of their work for so long. Who is our guest this week?
Our guest is David Cooper. He's an artist and cartoonist from Scotland. After drawing an existential horror comic about Lenny in 2021, he's now exploring The Simpsons through his art, including drawing every character in the show and making an ongoing fantasy epic about Hans Moleman.
We didn't even get to talk about his Hans the Woolman comic, which is so fucking good and surreal. We'll have to have him back on just so we can talk about that. We talk about his artwork. We talk about Movember, his month of Mo. We talk about it's the surreal process of drawing every single character from The Simpsons. He's been doing it for 5 years. He's just now getting into season 3. That's one of my favorite things in the world is people who double down on a really silly idea and take it super seriously. This is just in general, one of my favorite things in the world. I've loved this project. I'm a member of his Patreon and I follow it every week like everybody else. It's just fantastic. I love his work. It's a great conversation and it's a lot of fun. So please enjoy. David, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
What was your first Simpsons project?
It was almost 5 years ago. Well, it was 5 years ago to the day, a couple of weeks ago. I did this comic about Lenny that was very popular. It was about Lenny sort of realizing he was in a cartoon and having a bit of an existential crisis about the fact that, like, he's not the main character in his own life. And that was, like, the most popular thing I'd ever done to that point. And it was, like, on the front page of Reddit.
Oh man,
Matt Selman shared it, that kind of thing. So like that was the first thing, and then I kind of explored that vein for a wee while of like, well, what is the hell of existing in this world for now almost 40 years and not progressing or changing or evolving, and people seem to respond to it. So it's sort of is a good way to explore my art, focus on this one theme, this TV show that's been so important to me, and just find different ways to explore it.
That's amazing. And then what came next? Movember?
Movember was the same year. I think every Simpsons character ever, the Patreon project was next. Although I don't remember the order, but Movember was the same year. It was just a fun, silly thing to do where I just do, again, just like you hyper focus on a subject and then find out how can we kind of explore this from as many angles as possible. I'm starting to think of stuff I might do for Movember this year. It's several months away. It's half a year away, but I'm excited about what I might be able to do for it.
So that's 5 years worth of Movember. Movember is the first thing I saw. So let me just say this.
Oh yeah, right.
So I saw your work once the podcast started, my feed my Instagram feed was inundated with Simpsons related stuff. And one thing that popped up a lot was your work, obviously. And so I think I saw that on the suggested feed or it was recommended to me. And then about 2 days later, I saw you post in a Facebook Simpsons group. And I think it probably was a Movember. It was probably around that time. And I was so excited that you were in some of the same Simpsons groups, Facebook groups that I am. I thought that was so cool. What groups are you in on Facebook? Do you know off the top of your head?
Bart Posting's a big one, Obscure Simpsons Characters, and Rancho Relaxo Those are the
Okay.
three that I normally post to. Shout out to all of them. People are usually quite friendly in all of them. It's kind
Yes.
of it's weird when you're sort of posting your own work in these public spaces, and you're like, you don't want you don't want it to seem like you're spamming them or trying to promote your stuff too much. But people have been very positive, and people seem to like my stuff there, even if they have no idea who I am, which is very flattering.
Well, as a fan, it's amazing. I feel the complete opposite, that I wish you would post every day, because getting to see original Simpsons fan like the whole point of those groups that makes me so happy is to get to live in the Simpsons world in between watching the episodes, like finding a new dimension of interaction, especially with other people, the social aspect, but like generating new content and what do I want to say, new work based on the show that I have memorized is so exciting. So like getting to see your work is exploring the Simpsons in a brand new dimension. So it's like, as a member of that group, I speak for everyone when I say that we're always happy to see your work.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I think it's we all have this kind of shared language where we all speak Simpsons basically, and we all want to get together and celebrate that in ways outside the show. It's gone beyond the show in a way that I don't think anything else in my life really has. Like, obviously, I'm a fan of other things, but not in a way where I could get like, I'm a big Batman fan. I got some Batman comics right here.
Yeah.
If I met another Batman fan, we wouldn't vibe on the same level that you would vibe with another Simpsons fan. You know, instantly quoting things, blah blah blah.
Now, why is that? I guess I'm also curious about, is there something about The Simpsons itself, besides just being a quality show, is there something about it that lends itself to, for lack of a better word, fan art or like fandom work? Because you also do, your website is amazing. I want to make sure I always direct people to your website.
DoTheArtman.com. That's where I keep all the Simpsons stuff.
And then your own website. I mean, I was just going to say that outside of The Simpsons, you also do a lot of other pop culture, TV show inspired work. Bob's Burgers, right, is one of them.
Yes, I've done bits and bobs here and there, just whatever currently interests me. I did a Kermit the Frog piece yesterday.
Is there something, do you think, about The Simpsons itself, besides just the quality of it, like maybe the expansiveness of the universe, that lends itself to creating art about it?
I think there's kind of two aspects to that. There's the fact that nothing else has been able to exist in this kind of singular form for, you know, almost 40 years. The closest thing would be like superhero comics, but superhero comics are like, you know, they're making you think that they're changing, whereas the illusion of The Simpsons is it doesn't want you to think it's changed over those 40 years. So like, because they established it along the way and they just kind of stuck with it, then it's kind of ingrained in everyone's head. Everyone knows who Groundskeeper Willie is, for example. So from there, you can build upon that and be like, okay, so what is Groundskeeper Willie? What is Scottishness in relation to how it's presented in an American cartoon? That kind of thing. And secondly, I think that like it just hit a lot of us at the right time. A lot of Simpsons fans have quite a wide age range, I think, but I just think a lot of us, our brains were forming at the exact time where some of the most influential TV of all time just happened to be on TV. It roots its way into your brain, and now I'm stuck with it, as I'm sure you guys are too.
It's a curse more than anything.
So let's talk about the big project. Let's talk about every character ever. Is that what you called it? I'm sorry. I know you just told me.
I don't think I have a name for it. It's been going for 5 years. I should probably have a name for it by now. Basically,
Let's
what I'm doing is...
please, go ahead.
What I'm doing is I'm going through episode by episode from the very beginning and drawing every single character. It's been going for about 5 years now. At the start of season 3, there's no end in sight. It's my legacy I'm going to leave behind. But it's been going fun so far. We're at, I think, about 600 characters or something over 39 episodes, something like that.
Wow.
It's good fun.
And this includes like every single background character.
Well.
What constitutes a character to you?
The basic rules are the character has to appear on screen and speak. But like I'm sort of fuzzy about like what qualifies as a line. Sometimes a grunt qualifies them for inclusion. And then
Yeah.
in addition to that, I do what I call the bonuses, which is like any background characters that take my fancy or just alternate costumes for the family, that kind of thing. So yeah, lot of drawing.
What
When
you're
you guys were
doing.
kids, did you both? I had this poster that was like every character ever, but it was at this was
Yep.
probably 10 years in. I saw what I thought was you doing your version of that on your
I saw,
Instagram.
I know the poster you're talking about. I saw that
Yeah,
in a record shop the other day, and I almost bought it. I was just like, it'd
yeah,
probably be good to have that for reference. But that goes
yeah,
up to like season 10 or something. There's characters that I won't get to for years.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, and probably characters that they didn't deem a character that you do deem a
Mhm.
character.
Yeah.
Yeah,
One thing I quite like about it is it kind of gives a face and a voice to like absolute nobodies. Because we all feel like nobodies sometimes.
exactly.
The,
Yeah,
the the like the guy who works at the arcade in Moaning Lisa, he gets like two lines, but it's like no, he's immortalized on my silly little blog.
Well,
great. And it,
oh, go ahead, Eli.
oh, and now that will last as long as the internet lasts.
Definitely. Well, no, I'm gonna print it out and send it out
Oh,
to
okay.
everyone once the internet dies.
Oh, great, great.
You are kind of doing a service not only to the Simpsons fan community, but probably the show. I would imagine because like I said, I'm a member of your Patreon, so I am seeing these as they come out, which is so much fun. It's a treasure to receive in the Gmail inbox when they come out and you see a new character. But you are realistically probably naming characters that have, after 40 years, still never received a proper name. Like characters like Just Stamp the Ticket Man and Raphael, the Charles Bronson voice. Like they went, or even Comic Book Guy, right? These who is introduced in this episode we're going to talk about today, they went years without proper identification, right? It was until just, they needed to name them, or maybe the internet named them. I guess I'm just curious, do you ever think about your work as, what do I want to say? Like as actually becoming canon? You're the first person to name some of these background characters?
I might be the first person to notice them in 30 years in some cases, certainly. Like, the ones that I've been covering recently, if there's like a reporter and you'll only see like, a hand with a microphone, but because they ask a question, then I have to cover them and I have to make up like 90% of the appearance. Now, obviously, I'm not expecting Matt Groening to be like, oh yeah, that's the canonical version of that reporter who appeared for 2 seconds. But it's fun to kind of expand on it. With regards to characters like Raphael and Comic Book Guy, and the characters who like they're not written to be lasting, but they end up lasting. I think it's just like they write these one-off characters, and then when that role needs filled again, like Comic Book Guy, for example, he's there because he's selling a comic book. So next time a comic book type thing comes up, oh, they've already got that guy, and it's sort of like it's like a jigsaw. It just kind of builds up and builds up until after however many plots that involve a comic book, oh look, you've accidentally got a rounded character. It's the way they've built the mythology, and like it's pretentious even calling the Simpsons mythology a mythology, but the way it's kind of accidentally formed is fascinating.
Yeah.
And then, David, you draw. So the Simpsons have a specific style, but then you have a specific David Cooper style of drawing the Simpsons. Was that a conscious choice of you, like, or was it just you don't have any other choice but to draw in that style, or were you I want to do the Simpsons but slightly different?
The way I see it is like if you want to see the characters drawn in the Simpsons style, then you can watch the Simpsons. You know, if
Yeah.
I'm making stuff myself, I want it to be an extension of myself. Like I'm not being paid by Disney or anything, so there's no no need for me to fit their house style to fit into their box.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And that's what makes it so unique. Maybe you can say a little bit more before we move on about Movember, because I just think that is so fun. Past guest Matt Crow, I sent for his birthday, I sent him a Movember calendar or a printout or whatever. And he loved it because he's a big Mo head. But
Who isn't?
maybe you can explain what Movember is, and then talk about what the process is for filling that out.
So the short answer of what Movember is excuse to do a bunch of stupid puns. But beyond that, I was doing some sketches for people in books the summer before, and I did a wee thing where I was like, oh, I'll sketch any character you want on the inside cover. And the one who was requested the most, which really surprised me, was Mo. I didn't know he was that popular. So then I was like, well, let's just keep exploring Mo for a little bit. So every year on the 11th month of the year, we call it Movember, and every day of Movember, I draw Mo as a different thing. So let's see, can I come up with an example right now? There would be the Moker, which would be a jokerized version of Mo, that kind of thing. And then after a couple of years of doing that, I've sort of found other ways to expand and just be like, if Mo is my muse, my Mo's, what sort of art can I make from that? So I did modern art, which was a bunch of classic paintings reimagined with Mo. And then last year I did Animotion, which was like, here's what Mo would look like in Family Guy style, Bob's Burgers, classic Disney, blah, 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 blah. And it's just fun to sort of have this thing to look forward to where just for a month we can all get together and celebrate this horrible, ugly man.
Maybe one of Springfield's ugliest people, we're told.
Oh, absolutely.
And growing up, because there's that episode where Mo gets plastic surgery. When you guys were kids, I didn't think of O as being ugly. No. I just thought of him as another cartoon character. But then I guess it wasn't until that episode.
Yeah, I mean, they tell us that he's ugly, so you just have to be like, I guess by their definition. I mean, everyone's ugly in The Simpsons.
A massive overbite.
It's like Homer's supposed to be obese, but like everyone's kind of got the same shape as him, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. But it goes back to Eli's thought about your style. It's so funny. It almost becomes this third level of David Cooper doing anime, doing The Simpsons, where it's like, it's still, do you ever get too far away? Have you ever drawn something that's too far away from Mo that it becomes unrecognizable? Do you know what I mean?
You know, it was tricky when I was doing the paintings, because like one of the secret things about it is it's also just a good excuse for me to practice a bunch of different styles and stuff. But some of the paintings, it was like, I had to make sure I picked paintings that actually had people in them. You can't just do landscapes and expect Mo to emerge in them, that kind of thing. So there's a couple of artists where I was like, is this recognizable as Mo? And hopefully they
Jackson
were.
Molick.
I did that one, and it was a couple of people, like, it is, a bunch of paint splatters. I think kind of vaguely looks like Mo. A couple of people were like, where's Mo in this one?
That's awesome. Testing the limits. I have one last question, and then we can start talking about the show proper, even though that's all we've been talking about. One thing I've noticed, and Eli, I'm curious your thoughts too, since starting this podcast, one thing that surprised me is that I haven't gotten sick of watching The Simpsons. I think that was part of my concern, was that it would, what do I want to say, inherently alter the way I interact with the show. And I'm curious, David, for me, I will spend an hour doing research for an episode, and then to blow off steam and to relax, I'll go and watch a different episode of The Simpsons. I'm still using the show as a form of entertainment, even when it's quote unquote the work that I've been working on. David, I'm curious, if you spend a couple of hours drawing one character, and then you want to go and relax on your lunch break, do you pop in The Simpsons like you would before 5 years ago?
To be honest, not really. All the art I do and the intense studying of the show kind of is the fun part, but then I kind of put it aside. Most of the time when I'm watching an episode outside of my quote unquote work is if I'm in a hotel room and I'm just channel hopping, that kind of thing. What I've been doing recently is I've been going for Simpsons video games and stuff, other avenues, just to see what else is out there. I did a Simpsons hit and run the other month, just because I've never played it all the way through, and I was like, let's see what this is about.
Eli, quickly, your thoughts about if you're still watching the show the way you were.
Well, I mean, the crazy thing of the show is it is so short. Each episode's only like 22 minutes. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, now I'm sitting down to do my research for the episode, and then 15 minutes later, it's over. So when I was doing the episode for today, I was like, oh, I haven't watched Lisa's Substitute in years. I should check that out. But I stopped myself because I was like, well, that's probably someone that someone's going to choose soon.
Oh yeah, you can do it on here sometimes. I do try and touch in with the show currently every now and again, just if I hear like they've done something interesting. Like I'm not watching every episode just because I don't have the time, but like if I hear about an episode and I'm like, that sounds weird, or I want to see what they did there, I'll check it.
Same here. I'm always curious about new episodes just to see how things are going, even just to see the animation style and see and to hear everybody's voices to see where we're at.
I guess. Wait, I do want to ask one more artistic-y question. So you do. I guess the biggest difference between animation in modern seasons and seasons like 1 through 8 or 9 or 10 is the switch over to a digital, like a fully digital format. Do you what do you notice as the main difference between seasons 1 through 3 and seasons 58 or whatever?
They're definitely these early seasons are definitely refining it a lot more. You can find like style guides that people like Wes Archer put out there. Is like, here's the rules we have to follow to make them look consistent. But in the early ones, for better or for worse, they haven't necessarily locked that down yet. So occasionally you'll catch like an angle that looks a bit weird for one of the characters, that kind of thing. But then after a certain point, it becomes HD, and I'm no expert on the animation process, but I think what they do a lot of these days is more like puppetry more than animation, whereas they've got their assets, they've got their Homer asset, and they can move the arms on it, that kind of thing. So it means, I don't mean to be too down on it, but it means you get a bit less character, in my opinion. These early ones, it's like they're imperfect, and that's what makes them fun to look at sometimes.
Totally. I loved your drawing of just a random background character where the eye was like an empty space and the pupil was filling a negative space in the background, basically.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah. It's just because some background artist hadn't drawn the nose properly, and for whatever reason, it came out really weird in a crowd shot.
We can go ahead and talk about the episode. So you picked season 2, episode 21, 3 Men in a Comic Book, from May 9th, 1991, written by Jeff Martin and directed by Wes Archer. David, could you, for people who don't remember, in 1 or 2 sentences, just sum up what happens?
Bart goes to a comic book convention. Is that the Bi-Mon Sci-Fi Con, or is that a later joke? Anyway.
That's a later.
He sees a copy of the Radioactive Man #1. He then spends the middle act of the episode trying to raise the funds to buy it. He buys it with Martin and Milhouse, and then they fight over it, and it gets destroyed.
Perfect. Why did you pick this episode?
It was one of the ones I really enjoyed covering on my own project last year. I'm a big comic book nerd, like I used to work in comics, that kind of thing. And delving into the Radioactive Man stuff was really fun. And I just, like, you can't miss with basically any Simpsons episode from before, say, 2000. But I just found this one really fun.
Eli, what's your relationship with this episode? When's the last time you watched it?
I hadn't watched this one in years, but rewatching it, I was laughing out loud. It was really funny, and I thought everything looked really cool. I also grew up like a comic book nerd, so even in 1991, any famous comic book #1 being $100 is very funny. But yeah, I thought this was a phenomenal episode. It really made me laugh, and I think this is first introduction of comic book guy and maybe Mrs. Glick.
I think so. I think it's obviously all about #1s with the #1 Radioactive Man, but I think this is what I found. First appearance of Bartman on the show, comic book guy, too. Mrs. Glick, Radioactive Man, and maybe Nelson's first ha-ha. There was some debate whether or not there was an earlier ha-ha. But it was one of an early Nelson's ha-ha. So there's a lot of new stuff being put into this episode, which is fitting, David, for you, of like getting it. Who did you draw for this episode? Do you remember?
All the ones you mentioned. Who else? There's just a couple of background. I think there was 11 new characters from this
Woo!
episode. So like, there's a couple of people who work at the convention. There's a guy in the background. There's one of the comic artists who's like, he doesn't look like Jack Kirby, but I think he's kind of meant to be a Jack Kirby stand-in, that kind of thing.
Uh,
There's Dirk Richter and
oh yeah,
Buddy Hodges. Those
yeah,
classic
Buddy
characters.
Yeah.
They are. I mean, they're nobodies, but they are surprisingly consistent using those names in future episodes. They're like, kids will want to see the original Radioactive Man, Dirk Richter, that kind of thing.
I keep telling you, he's 65 and he's dead, or whatever. So let's talk a little bit before we jump into the episode. Let's talk a little bit just about comic books. So David, you have a career in comic books, and you've already stated you're a big Batman fan. So talk to me just a little bit about comic books and superheroes, I guess, specifically. Like, I guess, what are you into?
I mean, I grew up reading, Marvel, DC, all that sort of stuff, and then I got a degree in digital art in 2010. And I sort of started going to little conventions like the one from this episode and sort of finding my people, I had a shitty webcomic like every artist had to have in around 2010. And I've just been making my own indie comics consistently throughout. I worked as a flatter in comics. Do you know what that is?
No, I've never heard that.
No, it's like a low-level production thingy. Where I was sort of filling in the color on pages for Marvel and DC comics, and then someone else would come in and make them look pretty. And that's what I did basically up until my Simpsons stuff gained some steam, and I was able to kind of segue into doing my own stuff. But I still do the conventions and all that stuff. They're really fun. Have you ever been to comic conventions yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, a long time ago, I went to the one in Portland when I lived in Portland, Oregon, and it was a blast. I mean, it's almost sensory overload, and it really, for me, makes you realize, especially the big ones that involve cosplay and stuff, you realize how many subcultures there are just within the comic book community of like people completely obsessed, devoting their entire life to this obscure comic book I've never heard of. And
I know
it's amazing. It's impressive. What about you, Eli?
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I was very into specifically Marvel. Like, I had subscriptions; they would come to my rural PO box of Uncanny and Amazing. And because my mom collected X-Men comics in the '80s, and the story was always that she gave them away when she's like, I turned 30 and I gave them away, and I was like, but you had kids at that point, why did you give them away? But she collected throughout like the Claremont '80s X-Men stuff, and then one day when I was like 13 or 14, we were in the attic and we found a big box of all Uncanny X-Men, like '80s Claremont, like Dark Phoenix, Days of Future Past, the whole run.
Holy Grail.
So that was incredible. And then my house burned down. We lost them all. But yes, I've been to a few comic conventions. I remember going to WonderCon up in San Francisco when I was in high school. And then I was on a Star Trek podcast for a bit. And so we would do a few conventions there, and they're just so much fun. I went to New York Comic Con recently because there was like a film screening that was part of that. And as a member of like the writers union, I was able to go and watch. But I didn't see the screening. I just walked around the floor, and I haven't been super up to date with comics, but I was just walking around, Artist Alley or whatever, and I'm like, oh my God, it's Jeff Loeb. And I was starstruck from like names that I remembered as a kid, and they're just sitting there waiting for someone to come talk to them, basically. And
I know,
is that what you do?
People that you think are huge names, and then like you can just go up and shake their hands and have a conversation. Yeah. Like people who are like your childhood heroes, you can just go say hi to them. It's lovely.
That's incredible.
I think that everyone, regardless of how much interest you have in kind of pop culture, nerd culture, comics, I think everyone should go to one of these things at least once just to see kind of the circus of it, because the passion is enthusiastic. It's easy to catch.
It really is. Passion is exactly the word. I grew up reading and obsessing over comics too, and collecting comics. So,
you're literally wearing a Green Lantern hoodie.
I'm wearing my Green Lantern hoodie. in honor of this episode. But I did some research. I read a couple of books for this episode about the history of comic books, and we'll talk about a little bit about what I figured out, which was fascinating. But I got to say, this episode, not only is it super funny, I haven't seen it in over 10 years probably. I have not returned to this episode in a long time. Not only was it super funny, I think this had the best, most satisfying like round of references that I watched a handful of movies. I read about comic books yesterday. I got out my comic book collection and sat and read comics for a couple of hours. I had a blast. And I'm just so grateful because it reminded me how much this episode is a love letter to comic books, even though they take it too far. It really is a celebration of comic books and obsessing over things. But I wanted to say it's amazing that the older I get, the more I see how much The Simpsons have influenced me. Even in my comic books, I can see how The Simpsons influenced my sense of humor and what I was drawn towards. I had a lot. My favorite comics were things like Justice League Europe or Justice League International, and Squirrel Girl was more recent within the last couple of years. She-Hulk from the 80s. Like, my favorite comics were self-referential and like playing within the genre of comic books. These were fourth wall breaking comics almost always. And I'm like, I think that's because of The Simpsons. I think this, and we see it in this episode. I always forget. And seasons 1 through 3 do such a good job of reminding me The Simpsons is a satire of the present, of what was the present day sitcom. Like, it's not just, it's a sitcom making fun of sitcoms. And I think I look for that in almost all of my media now. I like movies that play outside of genre. I like books that are, you know, what do I want to say? Bending expectation, breaking expectations. You guys know what I mean? Like, do you feel that way about other media?
I thought this way before, like, it's almost a cheat where if your primary way into a lot of pop culture tropes and stuff is The Simpsons, which is already satirizing and twisting what the norm should be, then it's difficult to go back to what the original thing is.
Yes.
Because you've already, like, it's like you've already got the cheat code for what it is a shortcut to, you know? Like in this episode, we'll get to it, I'm sure, but like the Wonder Years bit.
Yep.
It's like, I saw that before I'd ever seen the Wonder Years.
Totally.
You know? So it was like, the Wonder Years felt lame because the Simpsons had already had their take on it.
Yes. I mean, it is the great I mean, I think that's the one of the things, this Harrison, incredible idea for a podcast again, because this is how we learned about so much of the world. Same Wonder. It's like when I saw the Wonder Years, I was like, oh, it's the thing from The Simpsons. Or, you know, when you finally see Citizen Kane, it's like, oh, I know this whole movie because The Simpsons buried it.
Movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Including this episode, we get a Hitchcock reference.
But yeah, with what you're saying, like, I agree that, like, other things that I saw out, I was seeking out that same tone, that kind of self-referential, we're smarter than everyone else kind of humor. Maybe that's why I'm such a smug bastard now.
I was about to say.
Okay, so the episode starts with the family driving to the comic convention. We get a great line. I forgot that it was from this episode. Bart and Lisa discuss if Casper is the ghost of Richie Rich, and Lisa theorizes perhaps he realized how hollow the pursuit of money, how hollow the pursuit of money is, and he took his own life. And Marge has a great line reading here from Julie Kavner. Kids, can you lighten up a little? That's so funny. That is so funny. But even in season 3, I'm going to say this a lot. Like even in season 2, they already knew who Lisa was. Like, Lisa isn't. I think Lisa already. You know what I mean? Like, that's such a Lisa thing to say.
Yeah, they take a little while to figure her out, but by this point, she's pretty formed, I'd say.
So we get to the comic book convention. We meet Buddy Hodges, who played Radioactive Man's ward, Fallout Boy. So of course, this is the introduction not only of Radioactive Man but also Fallout Boy. The band Fall Out Boy would take their name from them. I don't know. Did you guys listen to Fall Out Boy at all? That passed me by.
Yeah, it passed me by as well. Sort of, they felt a bit too young for me when they were coming out. I was like, you know, I'm sure I was like 17 when they came out, so that was, you know, kids stuff. So yeah, not really.
Yeah, exactly the same.
But I love that they're. I mean, I have an affection for them, if only because they took their name from a Simpsons character, which is so funny. Buddy Hodges. So we get a line where they're going to see Buddy Hodges speak, and Bart says, "Oh, so he didn't die in Vietnam," or something like that. This is a specific reference. I didn't know that this was a specific reference. I don't know what I thought this was, but this is a specific reference to the actor that played Beaver Cleaver in Leave It to Beaver. There was a rumor pre-internet that he died during Vietnam. The child actor died, grew up and fought in Vietnam and died. And he would come out every couple of years and be like, "Hey, I'm still alive and trying to act. I didn't die in Vietnam." And just one of those, what do you call that? Like through the grapevine, like Purple Monkey dishwasher stories, telephone games that kids would tell. You know what I mean? Like, I also heard that the kid from the Life cereal ads, Mikey, I heard that he died because this was like, as a kid, I heard that he died because he mixed Pop Rocks and Coca-Cola and blew up. We get the debut of the comic book guy. What do we think about the comic book guy, both his portrayal in this episode and then in general as a character?
He's no one's favorite character, but everyone loves him, I think. Like, what I find with comic book guy is they use him as kind of an audience surrogate quite a lot, but to make fun of the audience, to make fun of all the emerging little Simpsons nerds like us, to be like, here's what we really think of you in a poke him in the ribs fun kind of way. In this episode, it's like he's quite one-dimensional. I mean, he's kind of always a bit one-dimensional, but even so, he's there to serve the plot more than anything. And they definitely didn't expect him to be one of the characters that most people would recognize.
Yes, I feel the same way. You can tell that I think in this episode he's just serving a purpose as a purveyor of comic books. I don't think they ever thought that he'd be returning.
Although we do find out that he has a master's degree in folklore and mythology, which is
awesome.
Harrison, you're trying to get that, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm shooting towards something very similar to that, actually. And I would be thrilled if, after spending $40,000, if I could land my own comic book store. That would be great. I also laughed at, this is the first time I laughed at, the name of the store is the Android's Dungeon, which is really funny.
Yeah.
It's a very funny, and it's a good title. I mean, like, the idea of mixing sci-fi and fantasy in the title of your store is like very, very funny, actually.
And what does the sign say? It's a robot saying, "Take me to your comic books and collectibles."
Yeah.
That's really good.
So sloppy.
It's stuff like that where you've known the name of the shop for 30 years, and then you actually take a step back to think about it, and you're like, look at it with fresh eyes, and you're like, no, that is weird.
The Android's Dungeon. So the boys, Milhouse and Bart and Martin decide, so Bart decides he wants, his goal in life is to buy Radioactive Man #1. We get into a montage of him trying to collect money, find money to pay for the comic book. He, at one point, so we're at Krusty Burger, and I'd never laughed at this either. This is another moment that really got me. Marge says something like, when I was a kid, I wanted an Easy Bake Oven, so I got a job working for my sisters and saved up enough money and bought myself an Easy Bake Oven. Maybe a part-time job is the answer. And Bart says, "Oh, Mom, I couldn't ask you to get a job. You're already taking care of Maggie, and Lisa's such a handful." That's so funny.
That's great, yeah.
That really made me laugh. What do we think about this montage? Oh, before we leave Krusty Burger, Bart starts thinking about, future Bart starts narrating his experience, saying something like, "A little bit of my childhood died that day, the day I was told I needed to get a job." And so this is clearly a reference to Wonder Years, as we stated. The cool thing is they actually got Daniel Stern, who did the narration for the Wonder Years TV show. That's actually him. Daniel Stern, famously Harry, one of the two burglars in Home Alone. His brother, also Daniel Stern's brother in real life, was a writer and producer on The Simpsons, so he's probably a pretty easy get. Mm-hmm. Did you guys end up watching the Wonder Years at all?
Only a little bit. Like, after the fact. I saw it on TV, and I think my dad told me, this is something you should watch. This is a good show. And I'm like, but it's not a cartoon. Why would I care? So I've not seen much of it.
Same here. Eli?
I watched about a couple years ago. My ex-girlfriend was a big fan, and we watched the first season or so. It is really good. It's that, but there's so many 60s and 50s nostalgia shows that it's hard to like distinguish yourselves. But it really did feel like, oh, I bet when this came out, it was just everyone's. I see why it's so famous but it felt just so close to Freaks, like a less good version of Freaks and Geeks to me, that it was hard to like really get into it. But it was good, and the kids are extremely lovable actors.
I bet I'd like it now if I gave it a shot now, but when are we going to find the time to sit down and watch the Wonder Years?
Now I got to draw every character from the Wonder Years.
Whenever I do revisit something like that from sort of before my time, and go through, if it's like a classic thing, there's usually a reason it's a classic. I did I did a full rewatch of Cheers a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh no, Cheers is great.
Cheers is a great example.
Yeah, as someone, when you do watch, because you do watch The Simpsons or The Wonder Years or Cheers a little bit from a non-American perspective, correct? When you were growing up and watching this, were you like, oh, them, or were you relating to it like one would, or were you like, oh, look at these silly Americans over here doing goofy shit?
As a Scottish kid who's like lived in Scotland pretty much his whole life, it's like a gateway. You know, you're like, what's going on over there? America was like this magical land on the other side of the ocean, where they made all these cartoons and movies and TV shows, and The Simpsons was just like a lot of it, but specifically The Simpsons was like, oh, this is how I learn about whatever's going on about there. I had no idea who like Jay Leno was until he showed up in The Simpsons, and I was just like, oh, okay, I guess this is this important American guy. So like a lot of the stuff is stuff I'd learn about from The Simpsons and then find out about afterwards.
Yeah,
that was the first point of entry.
Incredible.
Was The Simpsons in the 90s a big deal in Scotland?
Yes, absolutely. It started on a satellite channel here in the UK called Sky One, and you'd have to pay extra to get the channel that showed The Simpsons. We didn't pay for that channel, but there would be Sky One vans going around installing Sky One in other people's homes with Bart Simpson on the side.
Whoa.
So before I knew who, this would have been, 90, 91, the show's already been debuted in the US. So like I knew who Bart Simpson was just through osmosis. By the time I actually got the chance to watch him and he was on the BBC, I was like, you're already my god.
You're the guy on the van.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so funny. I mean, that really does say how big of a deal it was. If that's
of course, some of the kids at school some of the kids at school will have seen it and like spoken in vague, like hushed whispers about, oh, have you heard about this show, The Simpsons? So the hype train was well on the tracks long before. Like there was no chance for us, really. There was no chance. We were hooked before we even got the chance.
You go home and tell your mom, I guess there's a show where a kid eats his shorts. I don't know.
I gotta see it. That's so funny. Bart, while looking under the couch, sings the song "We're in the Money." He goes, "We're in the money." Do 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 do. So this is actually from a movie. This is just a song I've always heard in Looney Tunes and stuff, but it originated in a movie called The Gold Diggers of 1933, which was a musical comedy, a Busby Berkeley comedy. I watched it and it was really good. So like I said before, almost across the board, everything I watched for this episode was like fantastic and so much fun. So this was a musical comedy about a group of performing showgirls who trick a rich old man into like some hijinks, basically some pre-code musical hijinks. But it was really fun. The cast is made up. The main cast is 3 women who live together. They're broke showgirls during the Depression, and they're trying to get a musical put on. And it was almost like I don't know if you guys know the Marx Brothers, but it was like a female version of the Marx Brothers. It was very silly and quippy, and all of the music. There were big musical numbers, like giant productions. It was really fun. I'd never heard of it before. When Bart was singing that song, did it register at all?
I don't even know where it would have. Was that when he's smashing the piggy bank?
It's right before that. It's like literally 2 seconds of song. He's digging through the couch, and I think he finds like a piece of candy.
Right, yeah. See, I wouldn't have even thought to think of that as a reference. It's just like, as you say, it's just a song. I didn't know it had. I guess it would have had an origin. I wouldn't have thought to look it up.
Yeah, it's I think they sing it a couple times throughout The Simpsons, and The Simpsons are definitely the place that I heard it from for sure.
Mm-hmm.
In college, I took a Hollywood musicals class and watched. I think I must have watched this or at least studied it because it was a. Because there used to be a ton of names like the Washington Sisters of 1926 or the Gold Diggers of Ot 2 or something like that. But I think it started off as a stage musical and went to Hollywood or something. But yeah, I almost exclusively know that song from The Simpsons.
That's so funny. He gets so desperate that he decides to help Mrs. Glick do chores around her house. This part was way longer than I remembered. There's like four jokes here spread throughout multiple scenes of him helping Mrs. Glick. Mrs. Glick is voiced by character actress Cloris Leachman, famous for James Brooks TV shows and then also Young Frankenstein. Are we Cloris Leachman heads at all? I don't think she.
Oh yeah.
If I hadn't known that she did this character, like if it didn't pop up in the trivia, I don't think I would have recognized her voice.
Same. I didn't know this is the first I knew it was her.
Yeah, I don't think she does future appearances of Mrs. Glick. I think this is the only time she does her.
Mrs. Glick famously tries to sell her candy dish at the yard sale, the rummage sale for $90, and you can only put,
yeah.
You can only put candy in it.
I always find it's easy to get her mixed up with Agnes and Crazy Cat Lady and the original Simpsons neighbor. I forget her name, but she's like another old lady.
Oh yeah.
They all kind of serve the same purpose. Just like mean old lady.
Watching Mrs. Glick now, I was realizing that we don't have old people anymore. Everyone's young. Even people who are 70 are young, and they don't act old like they used to. When I watched this, I was like, oh yeah, my grandma's old, and that's like my grandma. She got a bunch of weird candy dishes in her house.
Yeah. Maybe we're the old ones. Maybe that's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, that is true. But you're right. Old is just different now. There isn't this old-timey lady anymore. She makes a reference to her brother who died in World War I, which is really funny.
That was funny. That made me laugh out loud. It was so funny.
I think that's my favorite joke in the whole episode. The holding the grenade. And it's quite dark, but it's very funny.
Now,
he's not so bad once you get to know him.
Yeah, even Reggie. Now, let me ask you guys this. This is really nerdy. So we see a framed photo of her brother Asa, who died in the Great War, and she says he held onto the grenade too long. Then we kind of zoom in on Bart. So and then we get to a flashback of Asa holding the grenade for too long. Is this Bart's version of what he thinks happened? How did you guys perceive this? Or is this a cutaway, like a Family Guy style cutaway to what actually happened?
I think purely based on what the show shows us, I think it is Bart's imagination, because like that is also that's in character. That's the sort of weird thing he would think.
Wow, I had always assumed it was the latter, the cutaway, but that makes sense though. That would make sense.
I think I'm the same. Yeah, like this is the fun part of delving into it in such detail. I think you're right. It's like it could be this is Bart's perception of it. So when I covered that character in my project, I shouldn't have put Asa Glick. I should have put Bart's imagination version of Asa Glick.
Asa Glick as portrayed in Bart's dream. Well, the commentary did point out, they said this is one of the first times we ever did a cutaway joke, quote unquote cutaway joke. So they don't specify to this granular degree, if it's real or not, but they do. I thought it was interesting. They pointed out this is one of the first times we ever cut away from the action that was currently happening to fit in another joke. Which is interesting. So what do we think about his work? Well, let me ask you this, guys. Growing up, did you guys get allowances? Like, what was money like to you as a kid? How attainable was money and the things you wanted?
Not very. I did get an allowance, but it was not enough to. It was like enough to get like a comic book a week, that kind of thing. Um, definitely wouldn't have saved up for $100 comic book or anything like that. That wouldn't have even crossed my mind as a possibility. I would have asked for it for Christmas, and that might have been it.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of, my birthday's in January, so there's a lot of, can this be my birthday and Christmas present, please? Like, yes, the closest thing I remember is like a GameCube, and I would do like chore. We had like animal. I mean, it was my normal, routine. It was like taking care of the animals. So, but I guess it would be like I'll do it a little bit more, please, for like a little bit of money or something, or honestly like a Futurama DVD or something like that. I'm actually, Harrison, when I was trying to get money to go to Chicago for the Iowa intensive back in the day, I worked for my grandma, just doing odd jobs around her house, just doing manual labor for her, much as Bart did to Mrs. Glick.
Very Mrs. Glick coded then.
Yeah.
And I will say that I can't speak for you, Eli, but in those situations, it does mean something. I don't know if you felt that way, but like, when I got to Chicago, because my uncle gave me some money for my birthday. Like, he specifically was like, this is to get you to Chicago so that you can move out there. And like, that was what I needed to get to Chicago financially. And I always remember that and think of him that way, as opposed to just being able to afford it, or B, just accumulating the money and then randomly going out. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, absolutely. It meant a ton to me that my grandma paid me probably more than I earned, like for cleaning out her old newspapers or whatever. And then she passed away when I was in Chicago during the intensive. She died, so it meant all that much more. Mm-hmm. I got to take a break, everybody. No, I'm joking. Anyway, but how about you, Harrison? Did you work for the elderly when you were growing up? Yeah,
I didn't know any old people. But I didn't have money. Was really was fast and loose in the family. But like, I didn't have chores and I didn't have allowance. We just did the things that had to get done. We were kind of like the Simpsons, and like chores were like, he who tops it off drops it off. Like, in terms of the trash, or you do the dishes when the sink was full, and it didn't matter if it was your chore.
Yeah.
So because of that, we never figured out an allowance system that would equal that. Bart is really suffering. He at one point gets scratched by the cat. The Mrs. Glick pours iodine on his open wounds. We see a really cinematic shadow shot of him being tortured with iodine. This is a reference to Gone with the Wind, which I've never seen. This show, I would say, outside of Citizen Kane and maybe The Godfather, I would think Gone with the Wind is one of the things that's referenced the most. I can think of 4 or 5 other Gone with the Wind references throughout the show. I've never seen it, but it's a big movie in my family. It's my mom's favorite movie, one of my sister's favorite movies. They love the book. I just have never seen it, I think, because I want to wait until I really have a reason to watch it. What about you guys? Are you Gone with the Wind at all? I mean, it's like 3 hours long.
Yeah, that's the reason I've not watched it, because it's such a long one. I've just not fit it in. You're not really in the mood to watch. Like, I mean, there's films with like explosions in them. When are you going to have time to watch Gone with the Wind?
But like, it's
one of those ones that I feel like it's one of those ones that I feel like I've seen just because, like, I could name 10 lines from it now probably. But, yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I saw it in high school or in 8th grade or something, like around the time that we were studying that era. It's outdated for sure, but if I remember correctly, it was a good movie. But and I'm specifically speaking of the racist parts.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I mean, it would be interesting as we go to find I want to save it for the primary Simpsons reference for me to go and watch the movie or read the book. But I don't know. I can think of 4 or 5 other times in the show that they reference Gone with the Wind.
Trampoline.
Trampoline is one. Homer says, "I'll never go hungry again." Skinner is saying, "Tomorrow's another school day." So then we get to the comic book store. They're finally ready to buy the comic. A little bit about the history of comic books before we dive into Radioactive Man. The idea of printed images telling stories goes all the way back to the 1600s. This is a loose connection, but it made me laugh really hard. One of the first printed comic images was in the 1600s. The Catholic Church produced the broadside, which was a series of images with text below. It was titled Martin Luther, Doctor of Godlessness, Professor of Villainy, Shameful Apostle, God-robbing Husband, and author of the Augsburg Confession. Everybody tag yourself. I'm God-robbing husband. You guys can be Professor of Villainy or Doctor of Godlessness.
They all sound good.
Yeah.
In the 1700s, they began etching designs for cartoon images or comic images on copper plates. They were called comical cuts or shortened to comics. Then obviously at the turn of the century, comic strips became very popular in the newspapers. And it wasn't until I'm always really fascinated when I study this stuff, the economics that go into things, like the economic reasons things happen. Printing presses, newspaper printing press companies discovered that after 2:00, we're not printing newspapers anymore. Our printing presses are just sitting here collecting dust. Let's just get all of the comic books from the week, put them together, all of the comic strips from the week, put them together, reprint those all by themselves, and start selling that by itself. That way we have another reason to use the printing press. So they took the comic strips from the week, put them all together again, and just created what would become the comic book. I guess I'm curious about, and then obviously things went from there. Any more about comic? I mean, I honestly, if this wasn't a Simpsons podcast, it might be a thing about comic books, just because I love them. What about comic book collecting? We also get a joke right here where Milhouse is there to buy the Carl Yastrzemski 1973 rookie card with the big sideburns. Did you guys collect comic books, or did you collect baseball cards or football cards at all?
I've collected comics on a weekly basis. I wouldn't go back. I'd go up to Glasgow. I lived outside Glasgow, and I'd come up to Glasgow, and I'd find one issue featuring Spider-Man, and it didn't really matter what it was. It was just this is an old issue of Spider-Man. This is history. I'll get it. But when I think of collectors, I think of long boxes and piles of the things, and I never kind of had the money for that. I've got more into trading cards than now as a almost 40-year-old man. I've got right here. I've got a binder of all the Simpsons trading cards.
Shit! Let's talk about that. I don't know if I've ever seen those.
I don't know if they'll show up well on the camera here, but
oh wow. My God!
You got a Nelson original.
You got a Nelson rookie card. How hard are those to track down?
Not really, not very. I didn't pay silly money for any of them. I think it might have been a COVID thing. You know how everyone had a COVID thing. I think that was a thing.
Yeah.
And I could you can buy complete sets of most of them, and part of me was after a certain point, this is technically research, so I'm gonna get them all.
You can expense it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Eli, what about you? Collecting getting comics with the idea of collecting them.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess when I was a kid, I think it was the beginning when we were kids of these are worth something because, and the X-Men comics and, X-Men 1 and X-Men 25 and Spider-Man 1 and all that stuff, were and the death of Superman, and I think Superman 1, or actually Comics 1 of the sold for, $800,000 or whatever for the first time ever. So definitely when I was collecting comic books, it was with the idea of, at some point this might be worth some money.
Me too.
During the time that I had subscriptions to Uncanny X-Men and Amazing Spider-Man, and that was during 9/11 happened during that time, and I had in my mailbox the Spider-Man 9/11 issue, which was an all-black cover with all the superheroes cleaning up after 9/11, and it's Spider-Man.
More Doctor Doom shedding a tear at the site and stuff. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Very in character for Doctor Doom.
Yes. He's like, I know I tried to do this a couple times, but I'm sad that somebody else did it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I had that, and then I also collected Magic the Gathering cards. I was very into Magic the Gathering, and I remember spending like $30 on one card, and I remember like it was all the money I had. And I remember thinking like, and this will be worth it one day. And you know what? Now that card is worth like $1,000. But again, I lost them all in a fire. So
oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
God. I collected comic books, and I still do. During COVID, I got back into collecting comic books, and I got really into speculation. And that I was watching people on YouTube telling me what to buy, and like I had the apps that were supposed to predict who the next and it's so silly because it was like I was too scared to spend any serious money. So I wasn't, like you said, David, spending funny money, but like I remember like the Suicide Squad movie came out, and they were like, oh, Ratcatcher #1, like the first appearance of Ratcatcher. I was like, oh, great, I'll grab that. So what I have is now a bunch of comics that for maybe a 2-month window were going to be worth money, and now don't mean anything again. I have the first appearance of Ratcatcher. And if I had somehow, that's the other thing. I never figured out how to sell him. I never knew who I was supposed to turn around and sell him to. I never got that far. So I have a bunch of really random ass comics now.
I do that with records now, where I'll be like, well, this record, it's $25 or whatever, but if I sold it, it could be this, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, where am I going to sell this? Who am I going to sell it to? I got to have to buy like a shipping or whatever. Yeah, but it is fun.
So then, where were we? Oh, so the three, Martin is there. Martin has a great line. I think Martin is such an underrated character because the voice actor's delivery is just always so good. Martin is there trying to buy Radioactive Man #1 and lists some of the things they were doing. They were on a similar journey to Bart. And Martin says, I fished a dime out of the sewer, for God's sake. Like the delivery on that was so funny to me. What do we think about the third? We're getting into the third act here. It's all Martin, Milhouse, and Bart. What do we think about this dynamic here? With Martin being I don't know, kind of like the Spring Break episode where they go to Tennessee. I sometimes think about like why they pick the characters that they pick for them to interact with.
Yeah, it's early on, so it feels like it's like I have they established that Milhouse is Bart's absolute best friend in the world yet, or is he just another guy from class? Are these just his? Because early on it seems like Martin was a bigger piece of the show than he was later on.
I don't remember what other episodes have explored. Sorry, I got a list here. There's not a lot of episodes in which either Milhouse or Martin will have had as much time to shine as this. Martin's been there as sort of the snooty little kid, like as early as like Bart the Genius. He's like,
yeah,
are we so and so where we're like Bart doesn't like him and all that jazz. So like this is certainly closer than they've been before. Milhouse, I'm not so sure, but like early on they established people like Richard and Lewis and Wendell, and then those ones they kind of fade into the background, and then people like Martin and Nelson take more of the spotlight. So
that's a good point.
I don't know why Martin is specifically one of the three here, but I'm glad he is.
He gets some of the best lines.
Yeah, probably because he's the biggest at this point. He's the nerd on the show. So he would be the other guy into comic books, I guess.
They pool their money, they buy the comic, they go to the Bart's treehouse, and they read the comic. It's very similar to the Hulk origin story. He's hit with an atomic bomb and gains radioactive powers. Marvel just released a book called So You've Been Bitten by a Radioactive Spider, How to Survive the Marvel Universe by Daniel Kibblesmith. He was a Chicago writer and performer. It's really funny. It's almost a how-to book. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek how-to book, but it details all the different ways that Marvel superheroes get their powers, and then like basically like which ones in real life would kill you, and how you would survive getting hit by gamma radiation. But the book
having
and this
toxic
episode,
waste go in your eyes.
Sorry, that really got me. That would be so painful. So Martin, while they're they take turns sniffing the comic book. Martin says, "This is the stuff dreams are made of." That is a reference not only to Shakespeare, but also specifically to, one of the last lines in Humphrey Bogart's The Maltese Falcon. The third act, taking place in the treehouse, is a direct reference to another Bogart movie, Treasure of the Sierra Madre. Now, I'd never heard of this movie before. I'd never seen any reference to it. I went in completely blank. I watched it and I absolutely loved it. Eli, did you watch it?
I did, yeah.
What did you think?
It was a great movie. It's just one of those movies from the 40s. It's like, oh, this is a play. Like, it's a play, but out in nature. It was good. I mean, I think just personal preference, when someone's going Bogart was amazing in this, but it is just that thing of like, I just felt uncomfortable because I was like, they're not going to get along by the end of this.
So, David, have you seen it by chance?
No, I have not. No.
So briefly what it's about is it's about three prospectors in South America, three prospectors who go gold hunting, and they find a bunch of gold and they start to slowly go crazy and with jealousy and paranoia, especially Bogart's character, Fred C. Dobbs, who just thinks like he thinks everybody's out to get him. His other two partners are out to get him, and he kind of goes mad with paranoia, and it ends up blowing up the whole thing for everybody.
Right.
I watched it and I remember thinking after I watched it, I was like, this is really good. People should talk about this more. And then I looked it up and it's like, oh, this is considered like in the top 20 best movies of all time. It's partly inspired the character of Indiana Jones. Paul Thomas Anderson said he watched it every night while he was writing There Will Be Blood. Like,
oh, wow.
It is like absolutely considered a classic movie that just had slipped past my radar, or it was never hit my radar before. I just think it's really funny when that happens, where I'm like, hey, I found an underrated gem. And it's like, no, It's actually considered very, very famous.
I mean, that old timey prospector guy, I could see him, any prospector character, I'm sure. I mean, he's just so fast talking, and the way that he speaks is so funny that I'm sure, like any old-timey guy in any Simpsons episode, I'm sure has a little bit of him in it.
So they're in the treehouse. They decide to spend the night because they don't trust each other with the comic book to take it home. They spend the night, and paranoia starts to creep in, but especially Bart. I just have always thought this is such, and I don't want to say weird in a bad way, but just such a unique third act for a Simpsons episode.
Yeah, when you sort of learn about third acts and you notice that, like, oh, The Simpsons follows it to a T every time, and you can be like, oh, this treehouse section, which is basically just like located in the treehouse, and it's just 6-7 minutes of that. It's a unusual choice, but it's very entertaining. You say so it sounds like they're cribbing from the plot of the film. Are there like a lot of direct homages, like specific shots, specific lines, anything like that?
Yeah, specifically, Bart is playing the Bogart character to the point that before watching Sierra Madre, I never understood why it ramps up so fast in terms of his paranoia. But that's exactly what happens in the movie. Bart is playing the Bogart role to the point that Bart even says something like, "Nobody makes a fool out of Bartholomew J. Simpson," and Bogart's character constantly refers to himself in the third person and says, right, if not that exact line, he says something like, Fred C. Dobbs is nobody's fool. Like, he refers to himself that same way. So even that his manner of talking.
This also must have been the first use of the middle initial J, specifically with Bart anyway. So I noticed that with the Fred C. Dobbs thing as well. I was like, he keeps talking. He put his middle initial in there. And then when I rewatched this episode, that specifically stood out. No one makes a fool of Bartholomew J. Simpson.
Yeah. Whenever I watch this section, ever since I was a kid, there's always a little bit of a sadness to it because you know how it ends, and you're just like,
yes,
why can't these crazy kids work it out? And as someone who probably would have valued, a copy of Radioactive Man #1 myself, knowing that it gets destroyed, it's entertaining, but it still breaks my heart a little bit.
I completely agree. They have it for only a matter of hours after everything that Bart goes through. And let me say that too. What do we think about Bart's journey through this episode in terms of getting to this point of earning all that money? Like, this is the hardest we've ever seen Bart work, probably, outside of maybe Bart gets an F.
Mm-hmm.
It feels very, to me, it's making fun. Obviously, he makes fun of Wonder Years, but it also feels like a regular, this up until the treehouse, up until the third act, this could have been the plot to like an episode of a regular sitcom. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's Bart is very standard in this episode, if that makes sense.
But I also think the Simpsons twist on it is like the Alice Glick segment, which takes up, a fair chunk of that runtime, all leads to him getting like 2 cents or whatever it is, or
yeah,
2/4, whatever it is. And it's like that's the Simpsons version of it. Where it's like you did all this work and it meant nothing. That's I haven't seen much of the Wonder Years, but I doubt the Wonder Years is coming to that
really
conclusion.
Good point.
Totally.
That is a really good point, and they even put a pin in it. Like they come right out and say it with Bart saying this great line where Bart is like, "That's it. And working is for chumps." And Homer says, "I'm proud of you, boy. I was twice your age before I realized that." That's not the kind of lesson that a dad would give to their son on a regular TV show, right? That's a really good point. Bart would have been, in a classic TV show, Bart would have been rewarded for all of his hard work.
It's that Gen X cynicism. And this is like the early, I don't know for sure, it's the earliest example of it being put on mainstream TV. But I think that's why it hit for so many people. It was like, oh, this isn't teaching us the same lessons. It isn't telling you that everything's going to be okay. But you just get to laugh at other people, it not going okay for other people. So that kind of softens the blow a little, I think.
That's a really good point. So then we also quickly get our Lord of the Flies reference. Bart ties up Martin and calls him Piggy and says, "We'll stick an apple in your mouth." That's obviously Lord of the Flies, where the kids take over the island. We get more of those jokes later, obviously, in Das Bus. One of my favorite lines, Martin, tell him what we do. Martin, tell him what we do to squealers. And Martin says, "I don't know. Is it worse than what you do to people who have to use the bathroom?" Very funny. So they fight, like you said, David, they fight. Milhouse is thrown out of the treehouse and almost falls. Bart is holding on to Milhouse. He can either save Milhouse or save the comic book, which is also about to fall away. We get a reference to the movie Saboteur, which is a Hitchcock movie. The zoom in on the ripping sleeve is a reference to the last scene in Saboteur, which takes place on the Statue of Liberty. A guy falls to his death. I watched Saboteur. It's about a guy accused of World War II era sabotage, so he has to go on the run. It's okay. I go back and forth on, I don't know how you guys feel about Hitchcock movies. I literally go back and forth. Some of them I think are way overrated, and then sometimes I'm like, okay, I totally understand why this movie stood the test of time. I just watched Rear Window for the first time as an adult, and it's like even better than I expected. This one was kind of underwhelming. How do you guys feel about Hitchcock?
I went through a big Hitchcock phase many years ago, and I watched like basically all the big ones. Mm-hmm. So I got like it was like getting a best of album or something. I did The Birds, Rear Window, Psycho, North by Northwest, all of them, and like I love them. But then I've not really dug in too far. I did watch Saboteur many years ago. I don't remember it very much, so I've not revisited it. But I think the good ones are good. Maybe that's a controversial statement.
What do you think, Eli?
Yeah, I only got into him recently, like maybe 2 years ago on Halloween. They were showing Psycho at a theater here, and I went and saw it, and I was like, oh, this is... But it's the same thing. It's like, oh, I know every reference in this because it's in The Simpsons. But that said, it was awesome. And then after that, I watched Rear Window, which was also incredible. And then North by Northwest, that was also very, very good. That was like, oh, this was like a blockbuster.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, but I haven't seen there's a lot of them that I haven't seen, but every one that I've seen, I liked. There was one that I was like, maybe it was North by Northwest, where I was like, oh yeah, this was really good, but not my absolute favorite of all time. Or Vertigo, that's what it was. Vertigo, I really liked. I thought it was beautiful, but it wasn't I didn't think it was like a top 10 movie of all time or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah.
I've seen a few of them on the big screen in the past few years, and that's quite special, especially Rear Window. It's very much designed for that. It's a great watch if you ever get the chance to see it at a cinema.
That would be amazing. I would love that. We get a great, very iconic moment of Homer in the back room. Now, how often do you see, David, has the the rumpus room, or the backup room for The Simpsons. Do you think this might be the debut appearance of that back room with the beanbag and the tiny TV?
I think it is, yeah. Like like I say, in terms of my project, I'm at the start of season 3, and I think that's the only time it's shown up so far. Is a very rarely seen room. If you see like people who have done like blueprints of the Simpson house, that one is kind of conveniently missed out every like in most of them because it never shows up.
And there's no way to place it within the house,
Yeah,
really.
exactly. I think people put it above the garage, maybe, but
interesting.
I'm not sure.
It's funny. This is a specific scene that gets brought back in another episode where they just completely reuse that animation.
Yeah.
Which is fun.
That's the only other appearance of the rumpus room.
Yeah.
So the episode ends with the comic book being destroyed. It falls out into the mud. It falls to the ground in the mud. Santa's little helper comes and chews it up, and then it's struck by lightning. The lightning is such a funny thing, and it reminds me, for some reason, of the end of Mr. Plow, when Homer and Barney forgive each other or whatever, and then Homer says something like, "With two best friends working together, not only God could stop us," or something like that. And then though God says okay or whatever, and then all the snow in the city melts and the sun comes out and spring happens. Like this act of God interfering, like to really fuck over the Simpsons, is like very funny. For some reason, those two moments are always together in my mind.
Totally. And you know what? It's the same thing as in Treasure of the Sierra Madre, because that's what happens at the end. Is the gold dust gets picked up by the wind, kind of out of nowhere. Yes. The wind, the northern. Yeah, the northern winds come in and blow the dust completely around, and makes them lose their treasure. But it felt like had the exact same thought of like, it feels like the hand of God saying, "This is the lesson. This is what's important."
That's really funny. Any moments from the episode that we skipped over? Any other funny moments or?
No, the only thing that I was thinking about. Well, actually. I'll have this be my rec at the end. The only other thing that I was thinking about is just the confluence of Simpsons and comics in Simpsons comics. So I was just asking, this could be another 2-hour conversation, but I just wanted to know if you guys ever read Simpsons comics growing up. I had a couple compilations that I would read over and over again.
I read quite a few of them growing up, and then I'm reading some of them again for what I'm doing now. Actually, for this episode, I read all the Radioactive Man comics from the time. From 93, 94, they did I think it's a 6-issue mini, and then later they did another 6-issue mini. And what they did that's really interesting, so it's a history of comic books. So like issue 1 of Radioactive Man is a Golden Age comic book akin to like Action Comics #1 or whatever. I don't remember the exact thing here, but like issue 2, they'd skip ahead and do like issue 30 or whatever, and it would be like a Silver Age one, as it was written by a Stan Lee type. And then, issue 3 or 4, they'd do their take on, it'd be, issue 175, and it would be their Watchmen Dark Knight Returns era.
Wow.
So they'd sort of tell the history of comics through, a 6-issue mini. It's really great. I highly recommend it.
I should have just read that.
Well, they don't go back to the 1600s, I'm afraid. Very impressed.
Bongo knew what they were doing.
Well, now that we've talked about the episode, David, do you have any recommendations about movies, books, art that you think go well with this episode?
Well, definitely those Radioactive Man comics. Beyond that, nothing specific, I don't think. Just everyone listening to this, go to a comic convention near them.
That's a great suggestion.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Where can people find your work and find you online?
If I'm on a social media platform, I'm probably on there as David B. Cooper. And if you just want an overview of my weird Simpsons art, go to dotheartman.com.
This was awesome. It was so great to meet you.
Thank you. Yeah, likewise. This has been fun.
Thank you to David for being on the show. You can follow him again on Instagram and Blue Sky. Also, check out dotheartman.com for all of his Simpsons-related artwork. Cannot recommend it enough. You can follow this show on Instagram at Bartannica Pod. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a review or tell a friend. Eli, what do you recommend this week?
Well, I recommend going to a comic book convention or a convention of anything that you like. It was great, talking to like-minded individuals about something that you think is a niche interest of yours. There's really nothing better. And then beyond that, I'd say find some old Simpsons comics to read at a garage sale or whatever. But they're really fun. They're slightly different from the show, but they're very fun and interesting and funny.
I am very excited to dive into them, especially the one he said about Radioactive Man.
Yeah, that
sounds right up my alley. So I do want to check that out. I'm going to recommend the stuff all the research that I did. I read a couple of books called American Comics, A History by Jeremy Dauber, and I read Super Gods by Grant Morrison. Both of them are just kind of long form histories of comic books. And then I'm also going to recommend Treasures of Sierra Madre. So I was thinking about this, Eli. I reached out to you before the episode and was like, you got to watch this movie because it has so much impact on the episode. I think that I almost want to start a new level of recommendation called required reading or required viewing, because something like this or Citizen Kane when we get to the Burns episode or Cape Fear, the movie Cape Fear when we get to the Cape Fear episode, there are some pieces of media that not only by themselves are so good, but they are so influential to the episode that we're watching. This completely changed the way I view the third act in this episode, and it makes me like it so much more. Bart isn't acting so weird. Like, I understand more of why Bart is acting the way that he's acting, and even talking the way that he's talking, because I watched this movie. Totally. I don't know if you feel the same way.
No, totally. I mean, again, I kind of say during the pod a little bit, but which is short for podcast, but it's the point of the show, I think. And Harrison, I'll never give you enough credit for having a great idea. But the things that we learned from The Simpsons that turned out, they didn't just invent. They came from their pop culture knowledge or whatever. But so watching that movie and getting a sense of the overall tone of what the whole third act is, it was super eye-opening.
That's exactly how I feel. It changed the way, it's so funny. It changed the way I view that whole scene now in the treehouse.
Yeah.
And the movie by itself just stands alone as a really good, fun movie. So that's it for this week. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a brand new episode. Until then, as we always say, bye-bye, Bart.